I just like to, smoke a joint every now and then.
Good people don't smoke marijuana.
You dick!
Welcome to VoteProPot-Cast, brought to you by VoteProPot.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 12 of VoteProPot-Cast. I'm Phil Adams.
I'm Jay Britton.
I'm Andrew McCready's.
We're going to catch you up on some of the latest cannabis news, including a California congressman predicting that President Trump will back legal marijuana after the midterms, a big November coming as 4 states are set to vote on cannabis initiatives, a report on drug trafficking into the U.S. hitting a 10-year low, largely because of state legalization. Jay will share some marketing research on the top 10 ways people consume marijuana. Andrew would tell us about something called the Entourage Effect, the benefits of using whole plant cannabis in treating epilepsy. There's a new poll out showing a majority of health professionals favoring legalization. But before we get to all that, the big news item of the day, well, Andrew, why don't you tell us why today is such a big day?
Today is a historic day in cannabis reform. Today, Canada, as a country, legalized, which means that they're the second country in the world to do it. And being such a major economy, this is a major deal. The floodgates have opened, and Pandora's box has now been cracked, and the floodgates are starting, a stream of waters coming through now. So I really can't see where the world is going to turn back cannabis reform.
I can't either, and not to mention the fact that they are our neighbors to the north. Just by that reason alone, there really is no going back, I think. It's becoming more and more inevitable. What do you think?
Absolutely. And Mexico is going to be having some major reforms soon as well.
And how do you think this impacts the United States as far as, will it speed up our process of reform, or what do you think?
I hope so. What is happening, I think a big result of Canada legalizing is a lot of businesses, a lot of Americans are crossing the border and setting up businesses and investing in Canadian firms.
Yeah, taking money out of the U.S.
Canada is going to lead the world.
Big business is moving up there to run the cannabis companies so they can do it legally.
Well, they're going to lead the world for a time. I think as soon as the United States climbs on board, we have enough of a market and enough resources to eclipse everybody.
Oh, absolutely.
But for now, Canada is leading the world. Here's an article from Marijuana Moment. Headline is, Trump plans to back legal medical marijuana after midterms, GOP congressman says. In an interview with Fox Business, Representative Dana Rohrabacher, Republican of California, on Thursday said, quote, he's been talking to people inside the White House, unquote, and members of President Donald Trump's inner circle about ending cannabis prohibition. The congressman said he's been, quote, reassured that the president intends on keeping his campaign promise, end quote, to protect local marijuana policies from federal interference. Now, this, I think, is the clearest indication we've gotten to date about where the Trump administration stands, Jeff Sessions notwithstanding. I've been hearing a lot of conflicting viewpoints about the enforcement of it, but I think what we may be seeing here, if Congressman Rohrabacher is to be believed, and I don't see why not, that this is something that Trump is seriously considering and plans to do.
And, maybe it makes sense for him to kind of hold out till after the election,
Given the suggestions or maybe rumors that Jeff Sessions may be gone after
Right,
the
exactly.
midterms.
I was gonna say
I think it's
that.
highly likely. It's no secret. Trump has made no secret of the fact that he is not happy with that pick. If he'd have known what he knows now, he would not have picked Jeff Sessions. And the article goes on to say Trump has previously voiced support for a bipartisan bill introduced by Senator Elizabeth, a.k.a. Pocahontas Warren, Democrat of Massachusetts, and Cory Gardner, Republican of Colorado, which would amend the Controlled Substances Act to protect states that legalize cannabis from federal interference. So, yes, it's illegal federally. Yes, it's legal in certain states, but if you're in a state that has legalized cannabis, what we're hearing here is that you don't have to worry about federal prosecution. That's how I read it.
So we're going back to where we were during the Obama administration.
How so?
Because that's what Obama said. We're not going to spend any federal money, or we're not going. The feds are not going to persecute any state licensed business, and that's what Trump said he's going to do. That's the way it was before he took office.
We're going back to that. Yes.
Why stop there?
Well, I'd say, so he didn't say anything about taking it off Schedule 1?
The quote is that he's been, quote, talking to the people inside the White House, end quote, and he's been, quote, reassured that the president intends on keeping his campaign promise, end quote, to protect local marijuana policies from federal interference. So that would be a return to the Obama policy.
Like Andrew said.
Right.
He's making America great again.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the elections, those of you who are living in one of these 4 states, you're going to be voting, hopefully, on this very subject. Michigan, North Dakota, Utah, and Missouri. And I have an article here out of dispensaries.com dated October 11th. The headline is, "These are the states voting on legal marijuana in November. Voters in some of the most conservative states of the union are poised to legalize marijuana, at least for medical purposes." Now, Andrew brought this up before. Some of these are kind of bullshit, like Utah, but I'll go through them real quick. Michigan has had legal medical marijuana since 2008, making it among the first states to do so. Voters will decide whether to approve adult use cannabis. The state already is projecting it will rake in $100 million in marijuana taxes. The state would distribute some of that money to counties that allow marijuana sales, which in turn would go into education, improving roads. The second one, and perhaps the most conservative, is North Dakota. Voters in North Dakota approved legal medical marijuana in November of 2016, with 64% voting in favor. Just 2 years later, the state is considering legalizing recreational marijuana, even though the medical marijuana system is not yet in place, which I think is funny.
Interesting.
Yeah. A survey conducted over the summer found that 46% of North Dakota voters favored legalized adult use cannabis, with 39% against and 15% undecided. So that's actually a fairly close race compared to others. Yeah. We've seen others where it's up in the 70s and 80s. So this is actually kind of close. A win in North Dakota would be significant, as it is the most conservative state considering legalization of adult use marijuana. Utah. Voters in Utah will decide to allow medical marijuana sales at the ballot box. However, even if passed, the new law would have some severe restrictions not found in most other states. And this is where it gets kind of wacky. For example, it would remain illegal to smoke marijuana. So go figure. It's going to be legal, but you can't smoke it. Patients would have to use marijuana via edibles, vaping, or tinctures. Also, you would only be allowed to grow marijuana if you live 100 miles or more from a dispensary. So that gets back to what we've talked about before. Is shitty law better than no law? Or do you hold out and get a good law? So we'll mill that one over.
That's a great question.
Yeah. I mean, the last is Missouri. Voters in the Show Me State will decide whether to allow the sale of medical marijuana. There are 3 initiatives on the ballot. Two would require a constitutional amendment. One does not. The big difference is the proposed tax rate on marijuana sales ranging from 2% on one initiative to as high as 15% on another. So that's the four main states. Additionally, in Wisconsin, a slew of cities and counties have put advisory initiatives on the ballot to determine whether voters in their areas support legalized medical or recreational marijuana. So they're non-binding votes. They just kind of they give
The trial balloons.
yeah, they give the public officials a sense of, whether or not their constituents are interested. Politicians. It's all about polls. So there are your four states.
So that could be a lot of movement in a short time.
It really could be. Some of it's really kind of worthless, at least in my opinion. And for Utah, for example, they're going to pass a law that says it's legal medically, but you can't smoke it. It's just kind of stupid. But
what do you think about that, Andrew? I mean, is this worthwhile as kind of a foot in the door, or is it more worth it to hold out for the better laws?
I think that it's probably, as far as Utah is concerned, I think it's probably good that they pass it and it gets a foot in the door. Some legislation will actually go a little further and sort of state how the money's going to break down, who's going to get the money. Some of those, I think, are worth voting against. And also, the whole state only has 870,000 people.
Right.
D.C. has 700,000.
Right.
So we're not talking about a lot of people.
It's another state. We're up to 30 states now. That would be 31, 32, 33.
Right.
Absolutely.
If I lived in that state, I would vote for it.
And sometimes, like we've said before, you have to settle for baby steps. That's just the way it is. And my personal feeling is a baby step is better than no step, because I believe that folks in that state, once they see that in place and they realize, this isn't so bad.
I think I agree with that. I think if people get used to the idea of it, then you can move forward with it. If they're just putting up blocks to the whole idea of it, they don't want to hear about it. That's what you really have to overcome.
I think in all these states, there's a good chance of them passing if there's anything to the whole blue wave movement that I've heard so much about, because I really think the people who vote more on the left are going to be more inclined to vote yes for reform.
But that, not as much as you would think when you look. I've looked at so many polls. It's surprising. This is one topic, one subject that really doesn't fall left and right. Granted,
it seems like it doesn't. These are all red states.
No question, the numbers
when it comes to
higher.
Voters, I agree.
Right, the numbers are higher for Democrats and Republicans pro, but not a lot. It's very close. It's surprisingly even, unlike almost any other topic you would talk about.
Just about any other issue, yeah.
I think the majority of the people are more moderate, more towards the middle.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think the difference lies not between the voters, between the politicians. Traditionally, Republican politicians have been pretty stubborn when it comes to reform.
Well, I don't know if they're stubborn or they're fucking chickens. They're politicians. Everything is.
Well, at the end of the day, what's the difference?
Yeah, exactly.
They're chicken or they're stubborn. You have to get them. You got to have to get them over that hump.
They're so afraid of doing something that's going to cost them a vote or cost them.
And the only way to get them to do it is make them more afraid not to.
That's exactly.
I think more and more Republicans are realizing that being pro-reform is going to get them votes. Is going to get them more votes than lose them. Before,
I think you're right, and I hope that you are right.
Well, of course, all you got to do is read the polls. These guys read polls every day. That's all they do is read polls. And unless you're a freaking moron.
If it's not in a poll, they don't know what it means.
Well, yeah, that's true. They raise money and they read polls. That's pretty much all they freaking
they read polls to figure out where they can raise money.
Yeah, that's it.
There's a whole lot going on, and we really want to get your feedback on all of this, and we want to hear from you. So please do check us out at VoteProPot.com.
Or send us an email at VoteProPot@gmail.com.
And please like and follow us on Facebook at Facebook.com/VoteProPot. Drug trafficking has hit a 10-year low because of all the legalizations all those different states that have legalized, has affected the amount of cannabis smuggled in from Mexico. The Department of Homeland Security's Custom and Border Patrol has seen a decline in large cannabis busts of smugglers coming in either through the ports or through unprotected parts of the border. They've noticed that also that the number of people that they do arrest smuggling into the United States, 70% of them are Americans. And only 10 to 20% of the smugglers caught are Mexican.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Now, that's surprising.
Yeah.
Which I thought that was pretty interesting.
So Americans are going down to Mexico and smuggling in Mexican, basically, ditch weed.
Why would you do that? Yeah, exactly. Why would you do that? The weed sucks down there.
Well, now 70% of the cannabis consumed in the United States is grown in the United States.
Right. So why would you smuggle from Mexico to here? What's the advantage? I guess maybe because you can buy weed for nothing.
Well, it still
down there.
happens, but it's happening less is the point.
Back in 2011, they confiscated 2.5 million pounds of cannabis. Now, in 2017, that has dropped to 850,000 pounds. It's
Wow.
1/3 of what
Less than a million pounds.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Yeah, less
significant.
than half of what it was. You know, somewhere Milton Friedman is smiling and saying, see?
Yep.
See, I told you.
So now what has happened is there's been a demand in Mexico for high quality American cannabis. So now the big smuggling
The
is
tides
all,
are turned.
right. So now Mexico's going to have to build a wall to keep drugs out.
Told you they'd pay for it.
I told you they'd pay for it. All right, guys, I got one for you here. Pay attention. This is from weednews.com, October 8th. The headline is, what are the best ways to consume marijuana? So what this is basically is there's a company that I've seen bouncing around quite a bit. They're called BDS Analytics, and they do marketing research for cannabis companies, and they're probably the largest. So they provide numbers for companies on marketing, with those kind of things. So they've done a survey, a very large survey. Basically, they've released the top 10 ways people are consuming cannabis in 2018. So it's kind of interesting of all the ways you can consume, and I'm talking about different types of edibles, flower, obviously, vapes and pre-rolled joints, that kind of stuff. What do you guys, chocolate bars, what do you think the top? I mean, I think it's obvious what the top number one is. It's leaf.
Flower.
Yeah,
Flowers.
So I'm going to read you from 10 up, and you guys think what you think 2 and 3 are. I got to say,
Okay.
I wasn't terribly surprised, but in some ways I was. Number 10 is chocolate bars. Chocolate bars
Yum.
were the number one way of eating weed back when adult use sales first made legal in Colorado in 2014. So sales of chocolate bars are at 39 million. Number 9 is disposable vapes. And that's at 56 million. They're huge because people will go mostly for travelers. People travel into Colorado or Vegas or somewhere where they can buy a disposable. You don't have to worry about taking it home. Number 8 is live resin. That's at 61 million. Number 7 is wax. That's 63 million. Shatter is number 6 at 64 million. So shatter is pretty damn popular too, which is interesting to me. Dropper is number 5. Now that's moved way up, and dropper is just drops that have THC that are flavored that you put on your tongue, and that's becoming very popular. Especially
Those are the
with,
sublingual tinctures, right?
Tincture,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, tincture, and it's mostly young people in their 20s and 30s. Number 4, which is what I thought would be higher. Number 4 is gummies at 135 million. So. That's moved up quite a bit too. Like you said, chocolate bars was the top edible. Gummies have moved way ahead of it in the last year. Number 3 is pre-rolled joints.
Right.
Number 2 is vape cartridges. So number 2, only behind number 1, which is flower, is vape cartridges. People vaping.
now.
So for now. So vaping is huge. Vaping is at 476 million. So compare that to
vaping
gum.
is such a great way to take it.
It
I
is.
mean,
Agreed.
There's no smoke. There's no smell.
Yeah.
It's compact. It's easy.
It's a controlled dosage, very much
Controlled
so.
dose. You know how much you're going to get.
And you feel the effects immediately.
Yeah,
As
just like
opposed to-
smoking.
yeah.
Right, I agree. So anyway, that's in flour, in case you're wondering, which is number 1, of course. is 1.1 billion. So that's how far flower is ahead of the number 2 vape cartridge, which is at
That's a lot.
476.
So what's your favorite way?
My 2 favorite things are edibles. I like gummies, and vapes. I like to vape. What about you, Andrew?
Well, I use a.
Let me think about that for a minute.
Andrew's.
I think I'll have to go with flour. And actually, I think vape pen.
No, I use an ointment, actually. It's strictly medicinal. It doesn't get me high.
Is that for hemorrhoids?
It's not for hemorrhoids. It's for my shoulders. And it's just a infused ointment, and it is the bomb. See what I did there?
Yeah, I got that. That was good.
Okay.
And it really, really works, huh?
And it works like a charm. Oh, man, I'm telling you. It works better than anything I've ever used. It's a 50-50 THC to CBD, and it's pretty inexpensive, and you don't need to use a whole lot, and it gets me through the night.
Wow, that's amazing. And you've tried a lot of other stuff before this, right? Well, I mean, a lot of Advil
Sure.
and that kind of stuff. Right?
Well, I took a lot of Advil. I used a lot of lidocaine. I mean, just anything to make the throbbing in my shoulders go away. I have chronic pain in my shoulders, and nothing has come close to this.
That's incredible.
As far as fast acting and complete and long lasting. It lasts hours and hours and hours. Well, this is an article from investing.com called Why November Could Be a Big Month for Cannabis. And I think we can see it's already shaping up that way. But the article starts out, marijuana legislation has made a lot of progress in the U.S. over the years, but it still has a long way to go, especially at the federal level. But as more states seek to legalize pot, it'll undoubtedly put more pressure on the federal government to make changes as well, as a federal ban on cannabis makes it illegal to cross state lines with the drug. The midterm elections in the U.S. are coming up next month, which means many potential changes. The first is that there are many political races that could shift the balance of power in the U.S., which currently sits with the Republicans, who are still largely against legalizing marijuana, just as you said, Andrew. More Democrats in the Senate and running states will likely lead to more progress on marijuana legislation. While it may not lead to a direct or even a quick change on the topic, it will pave the way for future ballots and set the stage for more places where pot can be consumed. Now, I happen to think that I think right now, the way it's shaping up, the most likely scenario is the Republicans hold the Senate and the Democrats take the House. Even if that is the case, I think that still sets us up for a lot of pro-cannabis legislation in the future. That's just my take on it.
Do you think that those laws would make it through the Senate? I think they would.
I think they very well could.
Largely, I think they would. I think there's much more resistance in the House. Do you think? I mean, I can see President Trump signing those bills too.
Well, I mean, if that first article is any indication, if Dana Rohrabacher is to be believed, then it sounds like he would. Now, is he going to stump for it?
No, that's different.
I think that remains to be seen, but I kind of doubt it. I don't think that's high on his list. But if it makes its way to his desk, I don't see him vetoing it.
No, I think the issue is like the first article about Trump making this happen after the election. I think the base is the issue. I mean, the hardcore right-wing base is still very much against any kind of reform, cannabis reform.
Well, I'm not so sure about that.
Really?
I think it's much more like you said, that the desire to legalize cannabis crosses party lines more than just about any other issue.
I agree.
I think there's a lot of support. I think there's a lot of support down south for it.
True.
There's a contingent of conservatives who are very independent minded and don't like to be told what to do. And I think this is an example.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
I think a lot of the Willie Nelson's Farm Aid people some of the from the flyover states have really flipped in the last few years.
But I don't think of those two categories that you guys are describing as the base. I think of the base as the far right, just as the base for the Democrats is the far left. That's just the way politics is now. And though you do get the extremes even on cannabis and those two divisions, but it's.
Well, I think you can safely say that all the people that are against cannabis reform are in his base.
I don't think you can safely say all.
Well, a great majority.
I think a large.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think a large number of them. But I don't know. I guess it's people define base different ways. I don't disagree with that, but I think we may be surprised by it.
I hope you're right.
I'm not sure what to think about it, and I guess we'll see. But it may be more. Amenable. They may be more amenable to reform than we might think. Mm-hmm. We'll see.
Well, maybe we need to identify who exactly are these people that are against cannabis reform. It seems to me that there's more politicians against reform.
Yeah, I think you're right. When you look
than voters.
When you look at the polls nationally, medical is at 90%. And even recreational is up in the 60s.
61, 62%.
Right.
Some polls say 63.
Exactly.
But significant majorities.
But you certainly wouldn't get that if you went out and asked Republican congressional folks. Those aren't the numbers you would get. You just wouldn't get it.
I don't think you'd get 60% of the Senate
I don't think you'd get anywhere close to it if you just ask them straight out, what are your feelings on this? But I don't know. Maybe that poll exists and I haven't seen it. I'd like to.
Well, I think it's still got to be kind of a slow roll. That it's got to build up steam. It's got to reach a tipping point.
Yeah, and at some point,
the politicians, the elected officials will follow their constituents. That's what they're elected to do over time in general.
It's a bunch of small battles.
It is, and each one has to be won. But I'm thinking, if North Dakota and Utah and Missouri, that's Trump country.
Yeah, that is big time.
That is absolutely Trump. Michigan, not so much, but North Dakota and Utah, forget about it. If they're talking about legalizing, that's base.
What we're looking at in November are midterms. That's a very different turnout than what you would get in a presidential year. So I think they're much more cautious about the base because that's who turns out. So they think they have to be a lot more cautious. That's why I'm not surprised by the first article about California Congressman Rohrabacher saying he thinks this is going to, after the election, this is going to happen. I believe that. And I think that has a lot to do with it.
Well, I'll believe it when I see it, and let's see exactly what they do.
Good point. Good
exactly.
Point.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, they're not going to take it off Schedule 1. And they're just going to go back to the good old days of the federal government. He's going to do such a great job and keep the federal government off the states' backs. That's where we were before he got elected. So he's just solving the problem he caused.
Solving the problem he caused would be getting rid of Sessions. Because I'm not sure it's Trump. I'm not, I just have.
Well, who's going to take Sessions' place?
That's a good question, but I'll bet you it's going to be somebody that has a different take on this subject. I'll bet you.
If I were to guess, right out of the blue, I would say Trey Gowdy.
Really?
Of South Carolina. Yeah, he's retiring from the House.
Yeah, you're right. Good call. We'll see.
And he is he would be a good fit, but, who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's true, but I heard he's considering Michael Avenatti.
You mean Michael Avenatti?
Michael Avenatti.
The porn lawyer?
The sleazy porn lawyer?
Yeah, I'm sure that's who he wants.
No, he's running for he's going to be president. He's going to take Hillary's place in the next presidential election. He's
vying for a VP.
One can only hope. All right, now, Andrew, you've got an article about treatment of epilepsy that's a little different from what we've heard in the past.
They've found that whole plant cannabis is more effective at treating epilepsy than CBD alone. It seems that we all have heard a lot about cannabis being used to treat severe cases of epilepsy, specifically Dravet syndrome.
Right.
Now, in some areas, they've legalized CBD oil to treat it. Now, a team of Brazilian researchers decided to take a closer look at what they call the entourage effect. Now, some people are saying that the CBD alone is not as effective as the whole plant, so extracts from the whole plant. So what they say is that it's not just the CBD, it's the levels of THC, and there's many different types of compounds in the cannabis plant. And it's something they call the entourage effect, and how it's the whole plant medicine is going to be more effective. They did a study, and they found out that, yes, the entourage effect definitely makes a difference.
Now, are they juicing it?
No, it's extract, just oil.
Extract, okay.
A team of Brazilian researchers decided to take a closer look at the entourage effect, and they found that the whole plant cannabis extract was indeed more effective at treating epilepsy. The results were that a little around 30% of the patients responded well to the CBD product, whereas over 70% responded well to the whole plant product. Now, there's been two studies. One was in Brazil. The other one was at the University of Sydney. And they both correlate that, yes, the whole plant extract is better at treating epilepsy. So all these legislators are coming up with, well, we don't want to make cannabis legal, so we'll just do the CBD oil because we heard that can work. They're not really helping. Now, they've also found that...
well, not as much as they could.
Right.
That's for sure.
They also found that...
I bet the pharmaceuticals are not happy about that either.
They had strains that were actually lower in CBD and higher in THC and THCA that treated the epilepsy better than the CBD. So now they're saying it's not really the CBD that's doing it. It's a combination of all these.
Gotcha.
They had some strains that have a higher THCA level, which is just the THC with the acid molecule on it. And when you decarboxylize cannabis, it drops the A molecule, making the THC molecule psychoactive. Now, there's also elements like THCV or CBDN that also play an important role in what they call the entourage effect. So I really think there's a lot to the whole plant as a medicine, and also the many different strains. I think that's where the secrets, and that's where a lot of answers are going to lie, when they find the right strains with the right ratios, and they're going to effectively treat certain ailments better than others.
Right, for the right ailment.
Well,
exactly.
We talked about Epilex. Is that the name of the new drug?
Epidiolex.
Epidiolex.
It's the first DEA-approved cannabis-derived pharmaceutical.
Correct.
Just this year.
I was thinking of how much juice in a whole plant has got to be less expensive than that frickin' drug, according to what Andrew told us. How much
you
it
can
costs.
go get Rick Simpson's cannabis oil, which people use to treat cancer, or you could go get Charlotte's Web strain that's grown in Colorado, which Charlotte Figge used to treat her epilepsy, or her parents used to treat her epilepsy. And that's 3 months is maybe $1,500 worth, whereas the pharmaceutical is $32,000 a year, and it's just CBD. It's not going to be as effective as the lot cheaper. Or you can grow your own if you got your hands on some Charlotte's Web seeds, grow it, process it, make your own oil, treat your child's epilepsy effectively for a fraction of $32,000.
Yeah, right. And the pharmaceutical companies don't have to touch it.
That leads me to a survey I've got here. This is from marijuanamoment.net on September 13th, so it's about a month ago. Most doctors, nurses, and pharmacists support legalizing marijuana, poll finds. A majority of physicians are in favor of legalizing marijuana nationwide, according to a newly published survey, and an even bigger supermajority back allowing medical cannabis. The results of the poll, which was conducted by Medscape Medical News, also show strong support for marijuana reforms from other medical professionals like nurses, pharmacists, and psychologists. Here's how the healthcare professionals responded to the question, should recreational marijuana be legalized nationally? Physicians came in at 53% support. Health and business administrators came in at 72% support. Nurses at 57%. Pharmacists at 54%. And psychologists at 61%. When asked, should medical marijuana...
solid majorities across the board.
Absolutely. And I was especially interested by health, business, and administration at 72. The next question was, should medical marijuana be legalized nationally? Physicians, 67% support. These are physicians.
Wow.
Almost 70%, 7 out of 10 almost. Health and business administrators, 88%. Nurses, 82%. Pharmacists, 71%. And psychologists, 82%. So those are staggering numbers, especially for the medical. I mean, you're looking at 88, almost 9 out of 10 of the health, business, and administration people questioned support it. That's amazing to me. So anyway, the numbers in the for recreational at being at between 55 and 60 is pretty impressive, but the medical is off the charts. So,
and these are the people that are treating
exactly, Andrew.
Patients.
These are the
every
people
day.
who see
These
it.
are people in
These
the
are
trenches.
the people who see it. These are the people who recommend it to their patients, see the effects, see the results, and so that should say something to these people.
Now, my own doctor is not among those.
Is that right?
I asked him point blank about it. He said, "You're asking the wrong guy."
No kidding.
He didn't really want to talk about it, but he doesn't prescribe it, and he doesn't believe that it should be. And he didn't want to get into a big deal about it. I just asked, and he answered.
Well, I actually, I'll tell you a story. I had to do a pee test a few months ago at my doctor's office to get a medication that I was getting. And, my cannabis came back positive. And my doctor's a younger guy, and he's a really good guy. But I asked him the same thing because he was reading my chart, and he said, he didn't even say anything about it. I mean, I was, negative for all the stuff they were looking for, obviously, which is everything else. But obviously I was positive there. And I asked him about that. And here's what he said. And again, he's a young guy. He's probably 45. He said, look, I'm not, as a physician, I've spent my entire life training on this. Everything my career is built around has to do with research and results. And I don't have any real research I can read on it, so I can't recommend it. So I think it comes back.
That's fair.
In a lot of ways, doctors are just so used to reading all the analytics of this stuff. And there just isn't enough of it on cannabis for the reasons we all know. It's Schedule 1. So, right. But I mean,
I had the conversation with my doctor, and he said, he said the same thing. I don't have enough information. He goes, I need to know the LD50 for cannabis. And that means the lethal dose 50%. Actually, Phil and I were at a seminar. We saw a doctor speaking, and that question was posed, and he said, researchers and doctors have been trying to kill animals with cannabis for years, and they just can't.
The LD50 refers to the amount of an ingested substance that kills 50% of a test sample.
Oh, wow.
That's where and I think that's where the key is. Once we get more people in medicine on board and recommending it, that's going to be a big tipping point. That's going to be a big plus, a big push for reform.
Well, I think this survey says a lot. I mean, when the health business...
Well, I think the LD50 is going to be the bail that falls on top of you, as Willie Nelson said.
Well, they say the lethal dose is like you have to fit, 1,500 pounds in 15 minutes? It's beyond
the human capacity to ingest.
Right, and you're going to lose your lighter well into like the second pound. But also, here's the problem. Now there's extracts. Now there's concentrates. So if you could take 1,500 pounds and concentrate it down, but even still 1,500 pounds, I was sort of trying to do the math on this, and you see how much oil you get out of a pound. It would seem to me you'd have like over a gallon of oil you'd have to drink in 15 minutes to get the lethal dose, and that's not going to happen accidentally. I mean, and I don't know, anyone could drink a gallon of oil, of any kind of oil, even if it's...
Of any kind of oil. Right. I couldn't drink a gallon of honey.
I mean, vegetable oil or olive oil, man, even if it tastes good. Just God, your stomach would probably fight you on that one.
Yeah, it's like you can't drink a gallon of milk in an hour and not throw up.
Yeah, I've got a new study. There's a study out of Harvard now. Apparently... now, we've all known about the therapeutic benefits of cannabis, and apparently a lot of women have been using cannabis to relieve symptoms from menstruation. So there's a company now, then they're making something they call a weed tampon. Now, I don't think it's actually the cotton product, but it's more of a suppository. But it's used for women to alleviate the symptoms of difficulties with menstrual cycles. So apparently, Stacy Gruber, professor at Harvard University, is doing a study with 400 women, and they're checking the effectiveness of this new treatment.
Wow. Yeah, not to interrupt you, Andrew, but I know who she is. She's very, very well respected in the cannabis research sort of world. She works at McLean Hospital for Harvard Medical School. I've read articles of hers before. She's very well respected.
So she's a big name.
That's interesting.
Yeah, this is a legit.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I hadn't seen that article, but she's a director of, what is that? It's called MIND. That's what it was. MIND. It's the Marijuana Investigations for Neuroscientific Discovery. Whatever the hell that means. But no, she's brilliant. And she's very, very well respected. On a side, she is married to, the reason I know this, I read an article about her not long ago because I kept seeing her name come up in research. She is married to Patricia Cornwell, the really famous crime fiction author. Anyway.
Oh, really?
Little aside there. Yeah, because I'm a big Patricia Cornwell fan. I read a bunch of her books. But that's interesting.
Cool.
Is this for research or is this a product that there's somebody marketing?
They're testing the product.
Oh, they're testing the product. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Now, Whoopi Goldberg has a ointment, apparently, that women use for PMS or menstrual cycle difficulties. I guess when three of us aren't people, probably the guys.
We're not exactly the best people to be talking about this subject.
Yeah,
and we're not experts on this, But apparently, women have been using cannabis to treat for hundreds or thousands of years.
I've got an article out of Leafly that's related to this, Andrew. It's in their science and tech section by Josh Kaplan, dated last week, How Estrogen Heightens Cannabis Sensitivity. I'm not going to read it all because it's a long article, but I found it really interesting. It talks about how estrogen, something to do with estrogen, changes the way cannabis and specifically THC affects the brain. And the way they came about figuring this out, so in other words, the gist of the article is that women get high differently than men, very differently. One thing that I'll read in here, it says, in general, women are more strongly affected by cannabis than men, with one exception. According to rat studies, women tend to be less afflicted by the munchies. But what it says here about the testing, for decades, preclinical cannabis research generally used exclusively male rodents. This has traditionally been a problem across all areas of research. The strategy was supported to reduce the variability in behavior imposed by fluctuating hormones across the reproductive cycle. What I found out in here is that they almost exclusively, for all types of research, use male rats and mice. They don't use females because of the menstrual and the hormonal changes month to month can affect how the drugs. So a lot of times they've actually found drugs that are approved, and then when they go to do human trials, they find out, whoa, this works totally different in a woman than it does in a man.
Wow.
And so that's what they found with cannabis, and they're just now starting to realize this and study it, that there may be some medical uses for cannabis, and you've just given us an example of one that hadn't been discovered or realized before, because all the trials, all the animal testing has been on male animals, which is kind of interesting.
That's interesting.
I read an article where they're now starting, instead of using rats for laboratory experiments, they're starting to use lawyers. First of all, there's more of them. Second of all, it's less likely that the researchers will develop an attachment to them. But mostly it's because, there are certain things that a rat just won't do.
I heard there's so many people in law school that one day there's going to be more lawyers than humans.
All right, we could sit here and do lawyer jokes all day,
okay.
But let's wrap this up.
All right, well, We appreciate your spending some time with us on this very momentous day in the history of cannabis.
Way to go, Canada.
Oh, Canada.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And we hope you'll tune in again. We hope that you'll subscribe to our podcast. And please do us a favor, and if you feel so inclined, give us a rating. Hopefully a 5-star rating, but whatever rating you think we deserve. Or write us a little review or a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Check us out and all of our episodes on VoteProPot.com.
And we'd love to get an email from you at VoteProPot@gmail.com.
And please like and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/VoteProPot.
Wish I was up in Vancouver at the Cannabis Cafe, smoking good old Sensimilla at the beginning of the day. But here I am in New York City, hiding out in Central Park, getting kidnapped by the police today sometime before dark. But I wish I was up in Vancouver at the Cannabis Cafe, smoking good old Sensimilla at the beginning of the day. The judge looked down upon me, frowned. He said, "Kid, get on your way. Just don't start out your morning with espresso and a J." I said, "I wish I was up in Vancouver at the Cannabis Cafe, smoking good old Sensimilla at the beginning of the day." Hitched on out to Portland, caught a ride up to BC, took the bus over to the neighborhood to have a bowl with my coffee. Now I'm up in Vancouver at the Cannabis Cafe, smoking good old Sensimilla at the beginning of the day. Smoking good old Sensimilla